Welcome to the Exploring Neurodiversity podcast for adults who support neurodivergent children. I'm Adina from Play, Learn, Chat. I'm an autistic ADHD speech therapist, professional educator, speaker. This podcast is recorded on the Aboriginal lands of the Gadigal and Bidjigal people. Hi folks, today I'm sharing something a bit different for you. I was an absolute delighted guest on the Neurodivergent Pulse podcast a few months ago, and Laetitia, who is the wonderful host and beautiful friend, she was very happy for me to cross-post and share our chat on the Exploring Neurodiversity podcast. So that's what I'm sharing today. It was a lovely chat. I'm going to let it speak for itself. The name of the episode is Rethinking Speech Goals, Communication that Truly Supports Autistic Kids. And I highly recommend you go and check out the Neurodivergent Pulse podcast. All the links are going to be in the show notes. Check out the incredible podcast. There's so many beautiful chats on there. And it was a wonderful experience to be on there. So thank you, Laetitia, for having me. And just before we get into it, I wanted to share something very exciting. I've been rethinking how I offer professional development support and access for so many different professionals around the world. My training, my courses, my webinars. It's always been really, really important for me to make that very accessible and affordable. So what I have decided to do is package up all of my neurodiversity affirming practice, webinars, courses, pretty much everything, and also my custom-built AI report language chatbot that helps you not just reframe how you write about neurodivergent kids in reports and notes and so on, but it coaches you along the way. So not just a passive Control-C, Control-V, whatever. It's actually a coaching tool. And so I've packaged all of that up in a new way. So it's now a monthly membership. You can stay as long as it's helpful. Until the 2nd of April 2026, introductory pricing is on. So you can get the best deal and you basically lock in the price as long as you remain a member. And the price will go up on the 2nd of April. Dive in and check out the Neurodiversity Affirming Practice Learning Hub membership. I am so excited to invite you in. Members are also going to get the best offers on future events and so on. For example, my Neurodiversity Affirming Unconference, which is happening in August. I'm going to be showing you a lot more about that coming up soon. And I will say I have a lot of ideas about what else the Neurodiversity Affirming Practice Learning Hub membership might become. But for now, I'm going to head us into the chat that I had with Laetitia, where I share all about reframing what speech and communication support should look like for autistic kids. I hope you enjoy it.
Welcome to Neurodivergent Pulse, where we explore the often misunderstood world of neurodivergence with experts, parents, teachers, and therapists. Grounded in lived experience, each bite-sized episode gives you something practical to try. I am your host, Laetitia Andrac, AI expert, neurodivergent mom and founder of Understanding Zoe. This podcast is recorded on Darawal country. I acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. It always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Hello, Adina. Thank you so much for coming on the Neurodivergent Pulse podcast.
Thank you for having me. I am super excited for our chat today.
I know you're going to give so much inspiration and sparkle to everyone listening to this. We had the chance, as we were talking before we started the podcast, to finally meet in person in Sydney at South by Southwest, which was an absolute delight. But for anyone who's never heard about Adina and like, who is Adina? Who are you? A bit of an introduction about yourself, but also what brought you into this space of building this amazing impact that you're having around speech and reframing everything that's happening in that space.
I, like many folks who are neurodivergent, it's hard to define myself by one thing, which honestly is why I found myself at South by Southwest conference with you. And for anyone who doesn't know, just go look it up. It's very hard to just define what the conference is, which is why it's so interesting. I am an autistic ADHD. Some of my hats that I wear, I am a speech therapist and predominantly in that world. And that's kind of the hat I'm wearing today mostly, is as a professional educator, trainer, podcaster for my business Play, Learn, Chat, and where essentially support professionals to understand neurodiversity affirming practices and, gently and firmly lead people away from some of the harmful, we'll call them old ways, even though they may still happen. And my second kind of professional version of me is as a business coach for differently aligned business coaching. And I support predominantly neurodivergent business owners to make their businesses fit their lives, and less burnout is should be my tagline, maybe.
Yes. Yes, I love it. It is so potent. And who has just one business, I'd say, and I'm not one of those. So it's like, who has just one business?
Yeah.
Business.
So and if you ask me the whole journey, how I got here, it's all the, the cloud pillows and the crafting at markets and the speech therapy team and I've done it all. I've been there. And now I see this as like ADHD me. A lot of that was ADHD me, like try something new. And yeah, why not? And then autistic me going very deep into topics and having the joy to be able to create a world where I can deep hyper focus and share it and chat with you about this stuff that I'm so excited. You're going to have to shut me up. Like, good luck.
I respect your message and all of that, and I will just dive deeper and following my own beautiful special interest, which is often why people are like, oh, you did a podcast on this, it helped me so much. Like, yeah, it actually helped me a lot as well because I get to ask the questions that I want to ask. So let's talk about speech goals, because that's something that can be sometime in the old ways. I love how you said that, because then we're going to manifest for this to be really parked in the old ways and not something that we're going to see anymore, even though it happens still today. But when we say that we'd like to rethink speech goal, when we say we'd like goals to be more affirming, what exactly needs to be rethought, and what is problematic in this ancient way?
It's such a great question. And I'm going to do something, a little administrative point. I was looking ahead, and then question 4, I think I'm going to tack onto this because I think it works really well.
Good to you.
I just think it makes sense to kind of, I'll probably head there anyway. Okay. Now, nobody knows what question 4 is. Let's give people some context. Very neurodivergent of me. So just first, I want to clarify some terminology. Now, my, professional title, my training, it's all wrong. I'm a speech pathologist or speech language pathologist, depends where you are in the world, maybe called speech therapist, speech language therapist. What's common is, at least in the English-speaking world, this role has the word speech in it. The truth is, speech is such a small, narrow part of what we should be doing in our role. But the fact that the word speech is in our title is actually part of the problem.
Yeah.
Because it's prioritizing speech, as in mouth words, as in the words that my mouth is forming and speaking, as maybe equal or the best version of communication, which is wrong. That's what we need to be throwing out the window. And it really starts with this construct of like our training, our role, our profession, our degree. And so years ago, I stopped calling myself a speech pathologist because I did not like this word pathologist. Unless I'm talking to like a medical professional, then I probably will because it's my formal title. Okay. But really, therapist is a much more affirming word to me and is closer to defining what we do. And the reason I'm talking about all this title stuff is because it matters. So for families who don't have training, the confusion between speech and language, or what is communication and what are the forms of communication, mean that people are kind of coming to us or coming to maybe their NDIS planners or to their other professionals saying, we need speech. But what we all need to work to reframe is we need communication. And so I really advocate for actually like shifting our title to like communication connection facilitator. I don't know. I say it differently each time, but I wish that was it. And maybe I can reclaim that or make it happen. So all of that round, I think that's one of the first things we need to do when we're rethinking speech goals, is to clarify that probably most of the time we're actually talking about communication goals.
Yeah.
Where speech, and I can't fault you for this, because like I'm saying, this is so deeply embedded in the construct of our training and our role, and it's so far off the mark.
Yeah.
To me, I think what's problematic is that very often, again, I hope this is old ways, too often goals for, especially for autistic kids, but for all kids, for neurodivergent kids, are around changing how they communicate to meet an ableist neurotypical expectation, often speech. But thinking about all facets of communication, too often speech therapy goals that I would love thrown out the window are those that look to have the child fit this neurotypical expectation of how their communication should be. And all of that is about prioritizing how normal they look or how comfortable the communication partner is. I'm not saying all of it. I'm exaggerating a little, but what's very important, where I want to see this go, and this is like the future, this is me heading to question 4 that I referred to earlier. I think what's so important is that the whole community, and this comes from families, it comes from professionals, it's got to be driven from all angles, that we understand and respect all communication as valid and stop prioritizing speech or mouth words as the best form. Yes, it can be nice and efficient sometimes, but even I, as a very chatty speech therapist, I have many hours of the day and week where I shut down, and like 95% of my being does not want to speak. 5% of my being is capable of doing it, but to push myself to speak at that point is pushing myself to my edge, and therefore reducing my capability to like live, exist, interact, be okay, have well-being, and I'm an example of someone who can talk a heck of a lot, but it's not consistent. So there's just so many reasons why speech may not be the best form of communication for someone in a particular moment or at any moment. And it can be physiological, it can be sensory preferences, it can be skill-based, it can be due to many of us neurodivergent folk have difficulty with various movements, as in my body doesn't really listen to what my brain wants it to do very much. And for some people that results in apraxia, where you basically, the messages to actually make the mouth do the mouth words just doesn't happen very well or very effortfully, or it's not very reliable, or it doesn't happen at all. That's okay in a way. What I'm trying to say is we need to ensure that if somebody has a different way of communicating, we are supporting them to find their best way to communicate in that moment for that person, not for what the world around them is asking. Was that a really long answer to your question?
I loved it. It's a very long answer, but at the same time, it is a very comprehensive one. And it's one that I am very aware of, but I know that many listeners may not be aware of how, of course, we see in the norms that speech is the way, like speaking words is the way that everyone should communicate. Where there are so many other ways that one can communicate, and that I have preference to communicate and you have preference to communicate as well. Like, it's really, I find like for myself, a hug will tell me way more than many words, or collecting flowers and then creating something with those flowers will tell me way more than a few spoken words. So yeah, I love that. And the question for anyone who was curious was really around some example of misunderstanding and some example of ways that communication may be overlooked in some of our neurodivergent children and ourselves. So I really love what you just said. It was really about understanding communication beyond words. So love everything you said. So if we have, a therapist, and I love that you say therapist. I call speechy, speech therapist. I didn't know about the whole like speech pathologist in France. We have another word for them, which is orthophonist.
Yes.
So
Which,
yeah,
correct me if I'm wrong, does that also refer to sounds and speech?
yes, it does.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it does. Unfortunately, it's really about how do you pronounce, how do you express, how do you, like I was seeing an orthophonist when I was younger, and my brother as well. And of course, later on, an autistic diagnosis happened. But yeah, they call orthophonists. But how can we, as family, how can therapists, while learning, the affirming approach, the affirming paradigm, can really support those differences in communication to honor the child's autonomy, to honor someone else's autonomy versus pushing, masking, and then, as you've shared, reaching burnout or brownout. Like, what are some ways we can support that? Because I know we all have this internalized abilism. We all have these neuronorms, and I'm one of those people where sometimes I'm like, why am I doing this? Going back into my own programming, and they're like, what is this? And why am I doing this? But how can we help our children and ourselves to embrace other form of communication?
I think so much it comes to this question of, the question you asked itself is beautiful. You know what I mean? Like having these ideas of thinking about a child's autonomy, a child's right to be okay in the world. Anything that promotes that is probably a good thing. Now, I know there's some fuzziness and gray area, and this is where I have a ton of webinars and courses where I help go into the gray area in terms of if it is helpful for a child and what makes them happy is to scream at the top of their lungs all day long, but a parent is melting down because the sound of that is just not okay for them. There's a gray area, right? We can't just say yes to everything. And I'm not suggesting let's separate this out. Neurodiversity affirming doesn't mean we're saying yes or being permissive to everything. It is coming back to a position of first trying to honor and understand what does an individual want and need, and then questioning our expectations of them as well. Really checking in any goal, whether it's a stated goal written on a plan or whether it's something we just have in our mind, I really want my child to put their shoes on right now. Is that a reasonable expectation for that child in that moment? And the question, then we check in and we go, and I say in that moment because so often our children and we humans fluctuate our capacity. What I could do yesterday, absolutely categorically cannot do today because my brain is just not here in the same way. What we want to ensure is that the expectations we get to question them. We need to question them. Is it coming from a place of trying to have that child feel most supported, most comfortable, most self-aware? Or is it coming from a place of, I want you to fit in? Is it coming from a place of, this is how it was always done? And we don't necessarily throw all of that out the window, but we need to question it. There are some good reasons for fitting in or for having the awareness that sometimes I may want to fit in a little more. Sometimes I want to be myself a little more. Again, gray area, nuance. But I feel like this might be a little bit autistic me. It might be a little bit demand avoidant in a sense. I love to question authority. So this is the bit where I'm giving you all permission. Everyone is any goal, any intention you have for yourself, for a child, just question it. Is it an appropriate, helpful thing for that person in that moment? Why does it exist? Where did it come from?
I love that. And so for anyone who is going through their goal review with their speech or their communication therapist, let's call it communication therapist on this podcast.
Love it.
If you change that, you better adopt it. No,
Love that.
This is what we're gonna call it. But you are sitting with your communication therapist and you're reviewing the goals with them, you're discussing about the goals. Let's take some example of goals that we could reframe. So rather than, speaking is the goal,
Mm-hmm.
what's another goal we could reframe? Or,
Mm.
this one, oh my gosh, I hate this one, but like use your words type of goal. How can we reframe that?
Yeah.
What could be some ways that we could, as parents working hand in hand with therapists, because
Mm.
we love affirming therapists, but it's a journey to bring everyone there. And
Yes.
so, as parents, we also have our mission on bringing therapists through the affirming lens, as well as therapists have the mission of bringing parents on the affirming lens. Because I'm sure as therapists who are affirming, you may see some parents being like, fix my child. When
Mm-hmm.
you're an affirming therapist, you're like, nothing is broken. But so it's going both ways. So I'm very grateful we have an affirming therapist working with us with Zoe's goals. So I have some example, but I'd love for you to share from your expertise what could be ways we could challenge this norm and this status quo.
Absolutely. The first thing I'll say is I'm reminding myself here, and I'm sure you'll put my links somewhere in show notes, etc. Have a checklist for parents. Well, most of what I do these days is the direct support for therapists, for teachers, for professionals. I do have this, and I've heard time and time again, it's been very helpful, is a checklist for parents. It is called How Neurodiversity Affirming is Your Child's Team. And this is like, I've got green light, orange light, red light, and it's a prompt to help parents think through, is the team supporting my child affirming? What does it look like? And it's not a definitive thing. It can be a tool as well for having discussions, maybe kind of if they're doing pretty well, but you might want to like encourage them to do more of something in the green light area, for example. And so that's a resource. You can get that free, and that will be linked somewhere.
Yeah, it will be in the show notes, definitely.
Beautiful. And okay, so your question of like something, an example of like what could a reframe look like? Compliance goals sometimes exist, too often exist, where the goal seems to be for the child to do what an adult tells them. Now, again, gray area, let's go, okay, there's a space for safety. There is a space, like I have a 2-year-old and I'm working really hard with her at the moment to respond to stop so she doesn't run onto the road. That's a compliance goal where I've questioned and I've gone, how affirming is that? Am I following her lead? Not really, because in this case, her lead would be to run onto the road. That's a non-negotiable safety goal. So there's an example of like where it's okay to question and keep a goal.
Yeah.
If a compliance goal is like, let's say in a therapist's goal plan where it is, the goal is for Billy to sit at the table for 10 minutes at a time, twice each session, you have to ask why that exists. What is the point of the compliance, like the following, the very neurotypical expectation of sitting at the table existing in a goal? The fact it exists in the goal plan may be a clue that it's hard for Billy. And therefore, what's a more affirming approach to that? As much as possible, it's finding the way that helps you and Billy do the thing that is the actual point. The point is not for Billy to sit at a table. The point might be, I'm just going to throw something out there, for Billy to learn different color words. But, there's 100 ways to do that. You don't have to do it with a boring worksheet. That's one very specific example, but I'm sure you could extrapolate that in any direction. So if Billy likes to run around, how could you incorporate the running around with the actual activity and make it fun and make it engaging? And also, how can you help Billy meet those sensory needs or those preferences or engage in those interests, not in a coercive way, but in a connected, genuine interest way? Like, yes, do tell me about the AFL, like the football. I'm so curious. Like, tell me about your team that is the favorite. Why are they so awesome? I'm not using it as like a little carrot, like, gotta go chase the, why is the carrot the thing that kids would, in that analogy? That makes no sense to me. The carrot and the stick. Maybe it's a chocolate,
Yeah.
Like, we're not using what they love and what their bodies need and what their brains want to think about in a reward-based way as much as possible. Rather than do the boring thing, then let's do what you want. How can we genuinely use what a child wants to do, how they want to learn, incorporate that into the action, into the actual thing. And oh my goodness, the stuff we can learn from kids when we take a moment and stop getting them to just listen to us is awesome.
Yeah, and I will definitely link in the show notes the fact sheet around green light, orange, and red light. But some things that straight away I saw. So after having different experience with communication therapies, hashtag speechy, the one that we have at the moment that is absolutely amazing and super affirming. In the first 2 seconds, I knew because as soon as they arrived and they opened the door, straight away they asked Zoe, where would you like the session to be?
Nice.
And I was like, tick. Because sitting at the table and doing the exercise on a boring worksheet, as you described, is not the way she is going to learn anything during that session. So as a parent, I loved this. And every time she comes every week, it's like the same start, where would you like us to do the session today? And that's just a short reframe.
Because the sitting at the table was never the point of it, was it? Unless it was a power move from, again, we'll go therapists of the past. I need to control this situation. And checking as we're, questioning everything, why we're expecting something of a kid. Power moves from adults is one that can be sometimes hard to face, but do look out for those.
Yeah, definitely. And those is all about, right, this kind of pausing for a moment and just questioning. And yes, we love questioning as neurodivergent folks, but there is power in those questioning, in changing ways that may be ways of exclusion and discrimination. So yeah, amazing. So I think I would love to ask you this question, which is really about a vision for change and one message that you would have for professional bodies, for policymaker, for anyone who works in the space of speech therapy or communication therapy. What would it be? What would be that message, Adina?
You're probably going to have to cut me off because I may get ranty here. I love the question because I'm like, okay, let's go. The other thing I want to notice is, or just point out, this pattern matching thing. Patterns and matching makes me very delighted. As I was writing my notes for this, looking at your questions, what came on my playlist, which has about 100 songs on it, was the song Change Is Gonna Come. Or is it just called Change? I don't know. The version I was listening to was by the Fugees. And literally some of the words, and I have to hold on to this, I'm not going to sing it for you. It's been a long time coming, but I know change is going to come. And I love that. First, it's a great song. Secondly, it's a hopeful vibe because I can get very, very outraged at some of the ways that the policies and professional bodies and our government is handling things right now and always. But I have to hold a shred of hope. I'm generally an optimist. So when I kind of step back from my rage, I've got to hold on to this. Things are shifting in the right direction. The other thing I have to say is anyone in this world, anyone who is neurodivergent, disabled, parent of, dealing with any of this, you also sometimes have to look after yourself and step back and play Candy Crush or something. Like this is so deeply hard and frustrating. For example, things like constant cuts to the NDIS that is supposed to be there to support disabled folks to be okay. The NDIS is an idea, great. The execution is getting eroded and eroded and eroded. And I don't want to go into the depths of it because we only have a few minutes. And also there are other places to go and do that. And I need to do a bit of self-care too. Like it's really a really, really hard time. It's always in flux, and this feels like a particularly bad moment where disabled rights are just being chopped away. Funding is being... Disabled folks are basically being told we cost too much and we should probably stop asking for anything at all, because even just asking for a little bit is too hard to maintain for the government, even though that's what they were supposed to do. So I'm going to breathe through a bit of that. We've named it. You can go and think about it and do advocacy and listen to other folks who are talking about it more as needed, because it's really important. It's really hard. Also close to my world and heart has been Speech Pathology Australia, our professional body as speech therapists. I'll say I now have the pleasure of sitting outside of them, because I don't directly work with clients, because I now do professional development, training, education, etc. I have the joy of, I can be a bit critical because I have no fear of them. And honestly, they are excellent at talking the talk and doing absolutely nothing to reflect the commitments and the values that they claim to uphold. And just in preparing for this, I had a little memory, and I thought one of the things that every year has come up is I've been very vocal to Speech Pathology Australia year after year that they need to make their conference accessible in many ways. One would be making it both in person as it is and accessible online. And when I say accessible, this would mean more speech therapists could attend this, I believe, very good, comprehensive, important event, whether they are disabled, whether they're neurodivergent and get very overwhelmed by in-person events. Travel may be hard. Families, small business owners are excluded often because it's just so hard to take time off your own business to go to this, rather than being part of a government body that will send you into these conferences, or just the costs are very, very, very high. It's completely inflexible and inaccessible. Year after year, I've been at them about this. And they literally have values. I'm looking at it now. They say they are inclusive. We are respectful and strive for equity. We ask the right questions. We inspire innovation as part of their proactive goal. They're responsive. We listen, show integrity. They do none of this. And they continue to have this very, very neurotypical, bog standard way of like hosting events and excluding anyone, and they pretend to listen, and every year you get the replies saying, oh yes, we've taken it into consideration. It's just not good enough. Like for a body that represents being able to connect and communicate with people, they don't. And another very small, frustrating for me example of it is that you can get they have a podcast. You can get a transcript of their podcast episodes. To do that, you have to send them an email, request it, and wait a few days, and then they will send you a transcript. This is our national body that represents accessibility and communication. And, when I put out a podcast episode as a solo business owner, I put the transcript up on my website. It's not that hard. And 2 years ago, they committed to, they were working on it apparently. So I actually emailed them again today to follow up on that email from 2 years ago to see where they're at. It's just not good enough. Like, yeah. It's such a joke that these big organizations, these government bodies, they're like untouchable. They can say whatever they want. They can do whatever they want. They can pretend all they want to actually want to look after marginalized, neurodivergent, disabled folk and do nothing to actually live those values. Mm-hmm. I'm going to pause my rant there for everyone's sake.
Thank you, Adina. And I think it's important to share those points around the change and what you're willing to see shifting. And what I truly appreciate in the community and in everything you've shared is like we take action. We're not just talking about change, we're asking for those change. You've sent those emails, you've mentioned those elements. So this is actually an invitation for everyone who listen to your words, to what you share, to write this email. Like, if you have extra spoons that day, just make sure you're standing up, because the fact that you're standing up will help others in the future. And if you're listening to this and you're not identifying as neurodivergent yourself or as disabled, just be an ally and call out when something is not good enough.
Yes.
And, save some spoon for us where we don't have to then be the one having to do it. So I think that's kind of a beautiful message in all of this, which is you've done all of this work, but if someone else was listening to this, want to email also those professional bodies, want to email also NDIS, want to take action, you
Please.
can. You have permission. And it's not because I'm French and a revolutionary and always someone who is activist and doing things that I do it. It's because I think if I don't do it, I feel I'm letting down the community and I'm letting myself down and my family down. But I know that some of you may not have the spoon, but what about someone who has extra spoon? Please today step in and do that. Okay, so because I'm going on that rant too. But let's go into one thing that you've witnessed that made you stop things that this is what true communication support look like.
Yes. I thought, I could think of 100 ideas. And then what popped into my mind was something my daughter, Zoe, I don't think we've even discussed the fact that we both have Zoes. She did something a couple of weeks ago, which reflected to me that I think we're showing a great model of this idea that all communication is valid. So she has a notebook and some pens in her backpack in case she gets to school a bit early. It gives her a thing to do. Just she might feel like drawing or writing or something. So she came home one day and showed me a bit of paper she'd torn out of it, and it had yes with a tick on one side and I think no and a cross on the other side. And I said, "What's that?" And she explained that morning she just didn't feel like talking. So she made that for herself. She literally made herself a low-tech AAC board with a yes and a no so that she could point to the one that she wanted to show her friends so she could communicate with them. There was no stigma. There was no hesitation. She had this idea. I haven't ever shown her something exactly like that, but she's seen versions of high and low-tech AAC over the years. And she just, not only did she think, well, I don't feel like talking, so here's another way I can communicate. So she did that. She also, she was an advocate then, spreading to her friends, these other 5-year-old kids, sometimes I don't want to speak and I can also join in this other way. I love the innocence and the amazing, simplicity of kids to just be able to go, there's no shame, there's no stigma, it's just, I didn't feel like talking right then. I found another way. How beautiful is that?
I love it. It is so special. Kudos to Zoe. I love it. She's so creative. And this is where indeed it's the modeling, it's the fact that she's safe to do that and all of that. So there is so much goodness in this. Thank you for sharing that with us. So I just want to make sure for anyone who is listening to this that they can connect with you, they can, go and follow your beautiful content on both your page on Instagram and so on. Can you share with them, and all of this will be in the show notes, how they can connect with you and learn more about your work?
Yeah, so in my Play Learn Chat hat that I've mostly appeared in today, go to playlearnchat.com/freebies, and I have a few things, depends who you are and what you want. I've got the checklist for parents, as I said, how neurodiversity affirming is your child's team. I have a couple of free webinars, one specifically for speech therapists called Turning Affirming, one for all professionals supporting neurodivergent kids to kickstart your neurodiversity affirming practice journey. I have other freebies, I love doing that sort of thing. I do also have courses, webinars, and so on, but I think there's a lot. I love sharing this stuff. I also have a podcast called Exploring Neurodiversity. And then in my other hat, if you are a neurodivergent business owner or an allied health professional thinking, how can I do business differently? I am burning out. Go and visit me at Differently Aligned Business Coaching, and my podcast, Differently Aligned, is for that business. And yes, there's so many links, and I'm sure Laetitia will sort you out with them.
I will, for sure. Thank you so much, Adina, for coming on the podcast today and sharing your amazing experience and yeah, everything you do. It's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. And the conversations you're hosting so far are just so fun. I'm enjoying listening, and like, I love what you're building. So, and I love that we both have Zoes. We did very well.
We did very well. Crazy. Crazy. I didn't know that. Like we had so many chats and I didn't know your daughter was named Zoe. Hey. So understanding Zoe is for everyone, not just the Zoe of the world, but Zoe meaning life. It's for everyone who is living for now. So yeah. Thank you. Thank you for today.
Thanks, Laetitia.
Welcome to the Neurodivergent Pulse. We're joined by Zoe for a quick pulse check. Zoe, what do you think makes good communication between kids and adults?
When we don't get angry at each other and blame each other for things that we did ourselves.
Thank you for sharing. That's beautiful. Zoe, and I'm curious, what helps you in your classroom, for instance, to understand what's expected of you without spoken words from your teacher?
Times that help me in the classroom that like say when it's my turn to speak or when it's my turn to do stuff.
Yeah, to feed the fish,
Yeah.
to go and clean the kitchen. Like, what do you do? What are the kind of thing you do in your classroom where you have signs for?
Our jobs.
Yes.
We do jobs. We clean up one area for each person.
Cool.
And we've got a sign to tell us that.
That's amazing. Do you like that?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Zoe. That's a wrap for Neurodivergent Pulse. If this helped, follow the show and leave us a quick review on your favorite platform. You can even share this episode with someone who needs it. You can learn more about our platform at understandingzoe.com. Thanks for listening.
I'd love to hear what you thought of my chat with Laetitia on the Neurodivergent Pulse podcast. And wasn't that a beautiful take shared by her, Zoe? It's really lovely to get that insight. And, remember that we're all here for the kids. We're here to support the kids. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, if you're a professional who supports neurodivergent children, you're a teacher, an educator, a health professional, allied health professional, go and check out the Neurodiversity Affirming Practice Learning Hub membership. Introductory pricing is on until the 2nd of April, and there is so much there. It's completely flexible. Stay 1 month or stay many, whatever is right for you. All the links and everything you need to know is in the show notes. And please do get in touch with myself and with Laetitia and go and check out the Neurodivergent Pulse podcast. Thanks for being here. Have a beautiful day.